All right, everybody, let's go ahead and kick this off. Welcome to RiderChoices, Sunday, June 28th, 2020. I got one more person that wants in here. Let me admit them. They have differences in our dialogue with coaches to enhance communications and help develop and improve culture, sharing experiences and ideas for better mode of trial. One motive is improvement. Once again, this is an independent event not sponsored by any organization regardless of who.
Don, your voice is not coming through. I think he froze up.
Yeah, I think poor Don's frozen.
Should we give it a minute and see if he comes back?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Maybe he had to reboot. Who knows? Is he back home?
I don't think so, because he was talking about iffy internet service where he was.
Okay, that answers that question. But Nicole's in charge then.
Oh dear, we don't want that.
You'll be fine, Nicole.
Hey, we're going to talk
That's
tonight.
right. We have faith in you, Nicole.
Yep, we do.
I don't even know if I can start sharing with Don's screen still up there or not.
There you go. Don's coming in a second way, so it looks like he's back somewhere.
No, he's
Okay.
just stand by to stand by.
And Nicole, typically all you need to do is click on that green button that says share screen.
And that'll go even though he's sharing right now, it looks like.
Yeah, it should work.
Okay. That's the part I wasn't sure of.
Something's happening.
He's back.
I don't love this stuff, don't you?
Let me mute myself.
So are you
I just
able
thought
to
Don's
share?
front.
Nicole, are you able to share?
Yep, I bet I am. How's that look?
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to talk about why and how mindfulness matters to us as rider coaches. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nicole Eret. I'm the assistant program coordinator at Harper College, which is in the Chicago area. And I've also been a mentor for a number of mindfulness practices from a variety of disciplines, everything from Tai Chi and Qigong to working with prison inmates on mindfulness. And I was even a practitioner of traditional Chinese and Japanese medicine. So I've had a lot of experience with mindfulness. And what I noticed is that when my mindfulness practice is strong, my abilities as both a rider and a rider coach are much better. So I thought I would share some of this information about mindfulness with you and see if you can all benefit from it as well. So first, let's start off with answering the question, what is mindfulness? And I want to hear what comes up in your mind when I say mindfulness. How would you define it, or what do you associate with it?
Being at peace with yourself and
Okay, I think you said being at peace with yourself. Okay. Anybody else?
Nicole, I think of it as basically put your brain in gear before engaging your mouth.
Okay, that's a good definition as well. Who else has something to share?
I'd say being kind of mindful of others, or basically, I guess I'm using the word as its own definition, but basically being aware of other people's feelings that are around you or what they're thinking about.
Okay, yeah, awareness is a great synonym for mindfulness. Anybody else?
How about being empathetic towards people's situations when you're dealing with them?
Okay, empathy is a form of mindfulness. Anybody else?
I would say mindfulness with some people that are in your class that are starting off in maybe in a bad mood. You're mindful of what their situation is and try to work with them in that way to get them on a positive note.
Okay, great. Let's take a look at a couple of definitions of mindfulness. The first one is very technical from Oxford Languages. It's the quality or state of being conscious or aware of something. It's pretty straightforward, and we talked about awareness being a synonym for mindfulness. I want to look at another definition, though. This one comes from mindful.org. It says, it's the basic human ability to be fully present, aware of where we are and what we're doing, and not overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us. And hopefully, with that second definition, you can start to see a little bit more what the benefits of mindfulness might be. So we're going to actually do a little bit of a mindfulness practice here at this point. And we're going to do mindfulness of the senses. So everybody take a minute to make yourself comfortable. I invite you to sit up nice and straight but relaxed. Feet on the floor if you can. And go ahead and gently close your eyes. We're going to start with mindfulness of hearing. So notice the sounds that are present around you. If it's very quiet, maybe you're hearing the sound of your device running or the sound of your own breathing. Or maybe there's a little more noise around you, household noises. If you're outside, you may be hearing noises from nature. And don't judge what you're hearing. Simply listen to it, acknowledge that it's there, and go back to focusing on what other sounds you can hear. And then we're going to transition to the sense of touch. So right now, what can you feel with your sense of touch? Do you feel where your body is making contact with the seat underneath you? Do you feel perhaps your belly expanding and contracting as you breathe? If your hands or arms are resting against your body, you can feel that. Maybe you can even feel where your clothes are touching against your skin. And then we're going to transition to the sense of smell. So notice the odors around you. Do you smell something from within the house where you are now? Maybe the smell of dinner that's been cooked and lingers. If you're outside, are you smelling fresh air? And smell has a sense of nostalgia for us, so you may find that smells start to trigger other thoughts. Just let those go and return back to your sense of smell. And notice the next smell that comes along. And then we're going to work with the sense of sight. So just open your eyes gently, gaze soft in front of you, and take in what your eyes can see around you. Just with a soft gaze about 3 feet in front of you. Notice what you can see directly in front of you. Notice what you can see in your periphery. Notice whether things are sharp or fuzzy, light or dark. And we're going to explore the sense of taste. So if you brought a snack with you, now's the time to take a bite. If not, you can stay with the sense of sight. So go ahead and take a bite. And before you even begin to chew, notice if there is a temperature associated with your food. And then start to chew. Notice if there's a taste. As you continue to chew, notice the texture. Notice perhaps whether you're chewing on one side of your mouth or the other. And notice if the taste of your food has changed as you've continued to chew. And then go ahead and mindfully swallow and notice that sensation. Okay, and that concludes the work that we're going to do with the senses. So, what did you observe or experience as we were working with the senses? Does anybody have anything they wanted to share?
When I was listening, I could hear 3 very, very distinct breathing patterns behind me.
Canine breathing patterns?
Yes, and they're all completely different. I never even paid attention to it before.
That's a great observation.
With the hearing senses behind me, I could hear a couple other things. My grandson on the computer next to me, he's tapping away at the keyboard on grandma's computer, playing his games. This is okay. And now he's waving at me. I'll go back to your thing now.
Did anybody else have anything they observed or experienced that they'd like to share?
While I was waiting to get back in, I could hear the clickety-clack of the tires on the road.
Okay.
In general, Nicole, I would say when I concentrated, things were accentuated and more focused.
Okay, great. That's an important point about things being more focused, and we're going to come back to that.
Tony from Connecticut said that he experienced richer experiences and heightened awareness, keener experience as well.
Excellent.
Nicole, I think the process also slows you down in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think many people find that to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
We're used to having these senses all the time, but we don't pay attention to them. And when we do pay attention in a way that we're not used to doing, our sense of time can change too.
I'm in a strange environment, so when I was able to close my eyes and listen, I heard my stomach growling, which was kind of funny because I've been thinking about the beers that my wife is drinking on our vacation, and I'm sober.
Oh.
But there's candles burning in the house that we're staying in, and so I can almost hear the flame kind of flicker and the smell from the candles emanating. So I got several different senses going all at one time.
Okay, great. So if anybody has anything else? No? Okay. Let me advance the slide here. How does mindfulness practice work? Well, Ray said it exactly right on 6.4 when we were in VRETs. He said, we need to practice using our awareness so it becomes automated. And that's basically the theory behind mindfulness practice. But we're going to go ahead and take a look in a little more depth at how mindfulness practice works. So for those of you who are scientifically minded, mindfulness engages the parasympathetic nervous system. You may know the sympathetic nervous system as your fight or flight nervous system. The parasympathetic is its pair and opposite, which is sometimes thought of as the rest and digest nervous system. And in Chinese medicine, we would say that rest and digest is not just the literal physical digestion in the body, but also your mind's ability to digest things. From psychology, they say mindfulness builds awareness and acceptance, which are two key ingredients for adaptive growth. And also that you cultivate a meta perspective on your consciousness and personhood through mindfulness. So what kind of things do we need to be mindful of as rider coaches? What kinds of things can you think of that we need to be mindful of when we're out there in class, either in the classroom or on the range?
Mindful of what our students are doing on the range, especially. I've been told that I have eyes in the back of my head because just based on what I hear motorcycles doing, I can tell sometimes what they're doing.
Okay, great. So range management?
Well, I have to agree with what Carol just said with the range, like you said with range management, because if you, lately I've been teaching at a compact range where we could go up to 8 students with 2 coaches, but listening to how the motorcycles sound versus what they are actually doing could help you determine, are they being safe or not being safe?
Okay, so mindfulness not only of visual cues, but of auditory cues as well?
Correct. I agree with that one.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts on what we need to be mindful of as rider coaches?
Our fellow rider coaches.
Fellow rider coaches? Yes, absolutely.
I'm always trying to figure out what's going on in the minds of the students that isn't relative to their immediate task or to riding the motorcycle that might be interfering with their ability to receive coaching or to focus themselves.
Okay, so student frame of mind and possibly learning dynamics?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was going to say as well. That was really good.
Any others out there?
Well, you mentioned this idea of a meta. I look at or feel for a sense of anxiety. You know, what's the general feel of the class in terms of energy, anxiety, whatever you would want to call it. But you definitely can get a feel for classes. If you're centered yourself, you can sort of figure that out and use that in your coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts on what we can be mindful of as rider coaches? Okay, so let's take a look at a few things that we might be mindful of. We talked about range management. There's also the idea of risk management and time management that we need to be aware of. We touched a little bit on teaching or learning dynamics. We need to be mindful of adult learning principles when we're out there as rider coaches, right? And motor skills principles. And then we constantly need to be mindful of whether we're being safe, effective, and efficient. We mentioned the co-rider coach as someone to be mindful of, and observing visual and auditory cues both came up in our discussion, so that's great. Analyzing and coaching. is supposed to be timely, student-centered tips, right? And how can you do that if you're not present in the moment? And then we need to be mindful of our reinforcement, both our verbal communication and our nonverbal communication. So we're going to do a second little mindfulness practice. And this one is mindfulness practice using the breath. So go ahead and sit again, just nice and upright but relaxed. You can gently close your eyes if you wish. And what we're going to do is use the point just at the nostrils where the breath enters and leaves the body. And that's going to be your focal point. As you breathe, notice the air entering and exiting your body. And it's not a hard or harsh focus on that point. It's a gentle focus, maybe 20 or 30% focus on that. And just notice what comes up for you. As you breathe, you may notice other sensations like we noticed in our earlier practice. And this time we're just going to let those go and return back to the breath. So the breath, instead of being a really intense point of focus, is simply something that we come back to whenever we experience distraction. And it's inevitable that thoughts will arise, and that's fine. Just simply acknowledge that you've had a thought and let it drift right back out of your mind like a cloud that passes across the sky. Anytime you have a thought come up, don't judge it. Simply recognize it. Accept it for what it is. Briefly ask, what's your reaction to it? And then realize that whatever it is, it's not who you are. It's simply something that exists in this moment, and it's inevitable that it will change again. And then you can let it go. And we're going to sit with the breath for another minute. And again, any distraction that comes up, whether it's thoughts or senses, simply let it go. Go ahead and open your eyes. So, what did you observe or experience with this practice, using the breath to practice mindfulness?
So one thing I noticed when we were doing the first practice, when we were doing hearing, I didn't hear myself breathing. I was trying to, I guess, focus more on sounds around me other than myself. And this time when you said to, concentrate kind of on the nostrils where the breath comes in and out, I could really hear myself breathing a lot louder than I could on the first practice.
Okay. Anybody else?
Nicole, I was astounded at how my ears, like Josh was just talking about, kind of, I don't know if they were distracted, but it seemed like when I was inhaling, the noise was almost deafening, and exhaling was not as loud, but still it was just the focus and maybe awareness, to use a word you talked about earlier.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Did anybody notice any thoughts or feelings coming up? Or anything else?
Nicole, I continually went back to previous times where I've used breathing to calm myself.
Okay.
And it always pulls me back in and settles me down really well. And it usually happens when I feel frustration coming on. I know that the breathing brings me back to, kind of a normal level of sanity. And so that's where I went when I started doing it.
Okay. Excellent. So building that habitual state of calm and awareness and focus is what we want to do, right? That's the whole point behind practicing. Anybody else have any other observations?
Nicole, it reminded me that this is a practice. We're doing this now, but to really gain the benefits from it and to really feel how it works, it is something you have to do over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And with that practice, I think the breathing really does allow you to, to focus a little bit more and to return to a sense of calm, as Don was talking about. Say if you're going through a sort of an anxiety-provoking situation, you can use the breath as a way to recenter yourself.
Right. So both of these practices that we've done are things that you can do anywhere, anytime. You always have your senses with you. You always have the breath with you. So you can use these practices whenever it might benefit you or whenever it's convenient. You just have a moment, then you can practice some mindfulness. Some people find the breath a little bit harder to work with because it leaves more empty space for a much wider variety of things to come up, whereas when you're using the senses, you have a narrower focus. But I think that makes practice with the breath much richer and even more beneficial because you do have to deal with that kind of complete sensory and mental overload potentially, which is much like daily life.
Nicole, along with what Betsy said a few minutes ago about breath, if you end up having a class that you think everybody's going to do great the whole time around, but then when it gets time to the skill evaluation, you had 2, 3, or 4 of them that ended up failing the skill evaluation. That really stresses you out because you thought they had it down pat. And that's where you got to maybe take a couple of deep breaths, work with them, try to get them through it, or talk to them about rescheduling a retest, which in Missouri they are allowed to do.
Yeah, that would be a great time to apply the practice. So what are the general benefits of mindfulness? If you think back to that definition we had earlier about not being overwhelmed by what's going on around you and being fully present, what do you think some of the general benefits of mindfulness might be in the mind and in the body both?
Lower blood pressure.
Okay, lower blood pressure.
So this is Belinda from Tuscaloosa. We use when my daughter has panic attacks, we use the 5 all the time. Like that's how we, you know, because you talked about the breath can sometimes bring you a little too far in, but the 5 we use that for her and it works absolutely perfect. And so, and we do mindfulness all the time anyways in our home. And so, yeah, I love doing it on the range. And the benefits of it for me is to be able to stay calm whenever I do have a student that's freaking out. And so I appreciate you doing this tonight. So yeah.
Okay, great. So calmness and also reduced panic or anxiety. Anybody else have anything that you have heard is a benefit of mindfulness or you can imagine might be one?
Yeah, Nicole, what Laura just said about, you know, the students that you think might be ended up passing the skill evaluation with flying colors, they end up screwing everything up and they end up failing, and that really freaks you out because you thought they were going to be good students, but then that could have to do with the fact, are they test takers? Or are they just really having, to be blunt, are they having a brain fart?
Okay.
You know, there's something to think about there because we've all had those students before.
Mm-hmm.
I think the process can help slow and refocus not only the body but the mind. An example I can think of is standing in a grocery line where the person in front of you is having all sorts of issues with the cashier and you can just feel your anxiety level going up. You know, if you focus on the breath, you can really kind of regain some sort of a sense of peace. You can't change the situation, but you can find a way to kind of cope with it or manage it. And I think there's a lot of transference of that kind of thing to situations on the range. You know, skill eval, dealing with anxious students, dealing with your own anxiety in a lot of different kinds of ways. But it really can be almost like a gentle reset button for you.
Okay, so you kind of mentioned 2 things there, Betsy, that I want to point out, which was focus and reduce stress management. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Are you there, Carol?
say something that might be, yeah, I'm here. Okay, I'll type it in.
While Carol's typing, does anybody have anything else they think might be a benefit of mindfulness?
Dennis has typed in to everybody, it seems you are getting him to think about the processes he used while he teaches now.
Okay. And I want to give Carol a chance before we move on. Do you see her response yet, Don?
I'm waiting.
Okay. This is perfect. While we wait, we can have another moment of mindfulness.
Whoops. Mindfulness. Ooh.
Like Betsy had an animal come and join her.
Yes.
See, the positive energy draws all the creatures.
Yeah.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Okay, where's my dog?
Okay. If Carol comes up with something, John, will you just let us know?
I certainly will.
We're going to look at some of the what scientific studies have revealed about mindfulness. So, if I can get my slide to advance here. Reduced anxiety, we mentioned. Here was one that really shocked me. It actually results in reduced implicit age and race bias.
Ooh.
Think about the variety of students you've taught in your careers as a rider coach, and imagine how much reducing age and race bias might help a rider coach. We talked about focus or improved cognition and reducing distractions. Sarah, when she talked about resilience, talked to us about having a growth mindset, and mindfulness practice actually leads to that growth mindset that she talked to us about. We mentioned stress reduction. Mindfulness also boosts working memory, leads to reduced emotional reactivity, so that calmness, that stress management that we talked about, leads to increased relationship satisfaction and improved empathy and compassion. So knowing all of these things, what do you think are the benefits of mindfulness that are specific to a rider coach? How do those apply to us in our classes?
I want to pass something that Tony gave to us. He said that frustration is a product of others or things not meeting our own expectations. And an effective counter is to remove those expectations just to monitor results. So mindfulness allows us to get into that place where we can remove the frustration completely and still have goals and differential results because of it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for sharing that, Don.
Well, it was Tony from Connecticut. I was just passing along.
And thank you, Tony. Okay, so what are some of the benefits of mindfulness for a rider coach that you can think of, besides that Tony just shared with us?
Is it the point with the fact that you're teaching at a compact range where it's one coach to 6 students, that you have to be mindful of everybody's, what's the word, what they're doing on the range, especially out here on the range versus back in the classroom. You got to make sure they're hopefully staying safe versus, you know, something along that line.
So it can lead to increased safety?
Correct, 100% safety.
Okay, great.
I think as, you know, people that look at education and adult learning, it allows us to understand where we are. Better mindfulness allows us to understand where the students are, and knowing those 2 points, we can better find that place in the middle to help transfer the information and make sure everything goes off the way we expect it to without frustrations.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I was going to say more keyed into the students' feelings can also help us be more keyed into the students' needs. Are we giving the students, you know, what they need? Are we meeting them or giving them the right tips along the way that best works for them?
Okay, so better student outcomes would be another benefit then, it sounds like. Anybody else?
Nicole?
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about the whole process of slowing things, the mindfulness process, slowing things down. There's been a lot of research done on, you mentioned implicit bias. With police forces, they're doing a lot of mindfulness training, believe it or not, because they're finding that if they can help people, these cops kind of slow themselves down, they're going to be less apt to react and maybe hurt somebody. You know, so there are a lot of parallel uses. I think people are realizing that mindfulness has benefits in a lot of different situations.
Yes, I can't think of anyone who can't benefit from mindfulness.
That just really had jumped out at me. I worked part-time at an LL Bean store locally in the wintertime, and we all had to go through this implicit bias training. And, you know, we talked about this sort of stuff, and I guess I hadn't really thought of that kind of connection, but again, there's a lot of connections to being a rider coach, in that I think often we do come into situations that may initially feel very frustrating, but if we can kind of slow our process down in our heads, we can come up with some better solutions for everybody.
Okay, so problem solving is another
Yeah.
thing that benefits from
Mhm.
mindfulness, definitely. Yeah.
Nicole,
Anyone
as a
else?
writer coach, with what Betsy just said, I think we're all problem solving as a writer coach with students, because every student is different in how they were able to cope with the different aspects of each exercise. Can they get it, do they get it real right off the bat, or they need a little bit of remedial training to a certain extent?
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. Anybody else? So those are some great ones that we came up with. Let's take a look at a few others. Improved judgment. So that sort of goes along with perhaps our problem solving abilities that we mentioned. Incident prevention is something that can result from having more mindfulness. We talked about the ability to create a safer environment if you're aware of what's going on, right? Improved student learning was something that you had mentioned. Creating a high challenge, low threat environment comes from being mindful of the environment and the dynamics, your students' state of mind and their abilities. We said that one of the general benefits of mindfulness was improved relationships, so improved working relationships with other coaches can be a result of mindfulness. The ability to handle the unexpected calmly. We've all had something happen on the range that was not the way we thought it was going to turn out, right? And our ability to handle that calmly is directly linked to our ability to be mindful. Also, we develop improved communication and improved coaching. Remember, we talked before about coaching is supposed to be timely and student specific, and if you're not able to be present and prioritize, you don't give coaching that's as good. And then finally, as Don kind of alluded to, mindfulness of ourselves and where we're at can lead to continuous improvement as a rider coach. Did anybody think of any others to add?
I guess that I would hope that if we have achieved the way that you've described mindfulness, that students' experience of us is also better. So maybe we're providing a better service, or we're better customer service agents and all of that stuff.
Yes, absolutely. I think customer service is greatly improved by mindfulness.
I would, I hate to kind of go here, but this has been kind of my trip for the last almost 3 weeks now. I found my relationships not only with students and people like this group, but with my family and my loved ones has improved greatly, just because I've started practicing mindfulness through meditation, and it just has really changed how I approach things.
Great, I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so Don mentioned practicing mindfulness, and we did a couple of short practices, but how do you build a mindfulness practice? Well, these are the things that I would suggest to you. Number one, to start small, just 5 to 10 minutes at a time. And each of the practices we did tonight was about 5 minutes, to give you an idea of what 5 minutes of mindfulness practice feels like. It's really important to be consistent. Remember, we're trying to build a habit, this sense of mindfulness, of calm, of awareness that our body gets used to so that we can trigger it when we need it. So it's better to practice for 5 minutes a day, every day, than it is to practice once for 35 minutes. I would encourage you all to seek a mentor and to find techniques and disciplines that work best for you. So there are millions, maybe not literally, but there are a lot of techniques that are out there related to mindfulness. Some of them are very traditional. Some of them are from newer schools of thought, and you can find a lot of them online. There are great books out there. You can, again, work with a mentor who can show you different techniques. but I encourage everyone to take some sort of steps to start to practice mindfulness and just see how it begins to affect your world and your experience of the world around you. For those of you interested in resources, they're there along with my contact information if you have any questions or comments. And we have a minute now if you have any questions or comments as well.
Nicole, there's a number of meditation or mindfulness type apps. Is there any in particular that you like, or are you familiar with those at all?
I had one on my previous phone, and I don't remember what it's called anymore. I don't use it any longer.
Yeah, I tried one. I think it was called Headspace, but I don't know if it was my thing.
Yeah, there are a number of them. The one that I used was perhaps had a Buddhist affiliation, I think, an affiliation with Buddhist practice. And you could set up chimes and various things to help guide you through your practice. But I don't have one in particular I'd recommend.
I use one called Insight that does that. You can set up whatever chimes or whatever background you may like. I think it's flexible to what your beliefs may be, if that's necessary.
Okay.
Sure.
And there's also groups that join in, so you can actually join specific groups so that you're not alone doing it if you prefer to do it with other people.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
That is really neat.
You know, something I did a couple years ago, and I'd love to get back into it, is I don't know if anybody's ever heard of law of attraction. But I went to some meetings where people got together, and there was a lot of kind of mindfulness practice, but also meditation and some other things with it. And it was really relaxing. It was kind of like a calming thing, and I'd go once a week, and it was really a neat thing.
So you may have noticed that tonight I've avoided using the word meditation, but that's exactly what we've done. So anything that you can find as a tool for meditation practice is also a tool for mindfulness. They're one and the same.
And everybody gets real silent all of a sudden.
Sometimes meditation has a stigma associated with it.
Right. I was laughing about that because I knew that that was the reason that you didn't want to use that word.
There was a fair amount of silence tonight, Dawn.
Yeah, true. Hey, the other thing, and I don't want to jump in here and steal it, the moment here, but being mindful also includes hanging out with people of like minds and sharing your thoughts with them and having them share their thoughts with you, because it can help you clear your mind of maybe some things that weren't quite right, or maybe confirm in your mind some things that you were doing well. So I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
There's a tendency in this world to type on Facebook and not get face-to-face with people. And I think that really negates some of our humanity. I think this brings, when we're all kind of sheltered in places in different areas, kind of brings us all together. And I think that's part of being mindful and feeling human again as well.
Yes, and that brings up a good point, Don. You may notice as you start to practice that practicing with others is a different experience than practicing on your own. Even if you're sitting in complete silence and not interacting, there's a different feel to it, a different energy, a different experience when you have other people of like mind around you experiencing the same thing that you're experiencing.
I find I smile more when I'm around you folk. I don't know why, but it just happens.
Okay, if nobody had anything else, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hopefully you all got the information from this that you needed.
Thank you,
If
Nicole.
not, send me an email.
Can I ask a favor of you? And you don't have to answer. Don't mind sharing that. I'd like to post it on the site. It's really great information.
Yeah, that's fine.
Nicole, thank you very much.
You're welcome very much. Thank you all for participating and sharing your thoughts and experiences with us.
Trying to do.
Don's doing a round of applause.
Yes, he is.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It was really, really put me in a good place too. It's just nice and relaxing.
Yes,
Great.
thank you. Nice job.
You're welcome.
Okay, so once again, thank you, Nicole. I really enjoyed how that has connected the last several tribe talks that we have done. It just fits in really well, and I'm glad you were able to share it with us. I'm going to try the poll. I've had bandwidth problems, and I know we've had people dropping in and out. So if I drop out, Nicole has been dubbed as the co-host. She'll kind of take over for a moment till I get back on. But let's do the Tribe Talk poll for 28 June. Polling is up. Has everybody got the polling? Because I'm not seeing polling votes yet, so I'm scared.
Well, I'm seeing the
Oh,
controls for the poll and not able to vote myself.
Okay.
I got it done.
All right. All right. I was just stressed for a moment.
Now, whether they're right answers, I don't know. I guess I'll find out in a minute.
We are at 90%. One more person. We'll give it some time. Feeling really good about this tonight, people.
I'm glad you are, Dawn.
May the odds be forever in your favor.
Thank goodness this isn't for a license.
True.
That you know of.
Well,
Oh, I'm not worried about
Like the flavor, some of us may be a deep doo-doo.
so I am assuming that we have all voted in the fact that Nicole can't, and we're at 90%. So I will end and share the results with everybody and read it for the audio here. Number one question was acquisition of driving skills occurs in the sequence of which 3 phases? 67% were right on the money tonight. The answer is A, cognitive, associative, and autonomous. You may have read that in your Rider Coach Guide before.
Hey, it feels good to get one right once in a while.
Once in a while, it does feel really good.
It's been a while, so I'm pretty glad.
It's about time, Josh. I feel the same way.
All right, number 2, the absence of proven benefits of training seemed to show that, once again, 67% said research methods are inadequate. So that was the correct answer as well. So we did pretty good tonight. I'm really positive and happy about this. So, hey, Josh, would you mind taking a screenshot again? Because I'm having problems with that.
Sure, no problem. I'll do that right now.
There's number 1. Let me know when you're ready and I'll slide it to
Yep,
number 2.
I'm good. And then slid. Yep. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. And then I'm going to stop sharing here. So a couple thoughts tonight as we come to the end of this. Once again, really great session with Nicole. Thank you very much. Round of applause, everybody. It came at an appropriate time, and so I got a special thank you for Nicole because timing is everything in life, isn't it? So as you can see, we've changed the time a little bit. Our numbers have dropped quite a bit lately. I'm re-looking things slightly as my life gets a little bit busier this summer. We will have Tribe Talks again next week at 8 p.m. And what I think I'm going to do is just throw together and one over the worldview of what we've done in the last almost 4 months of this. And so I hope that you'll show up for that. I'll do a little tease when I can on the road this week. But I want, if you can, to show up, bring somebody else in, and then from there, we will make some determination, maybe not to do this every week, but maybe once or twice a month. And that will, I know this takes a lot of personal time for a lot of people. Maybe we can get a larger number to come if we just shrink it down to 1 or 2 dates a month. As you can see, the same people show up all the time, and I greatly appreciate that. This will continue in some form, just maybe not as often as before. So thank you all again. I'll give anybody the opportunity to throw out last minute caveats if you would like.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Don. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you all. That's the most important thing, is that we all come together as a tribe. And it has a deeper meaning with me lately. In fact, walking in Savannah, Georgia, of all places, last week, I walked by, actually, not only Savannah, but in Colonial Williamsburg, believe it or not, last week. I kept coming upon signs that say tribe. And that just lets me know we're all in the right tribe and doing the right things. And I appreciate that you continue to do that. So everybody have a good night.
Don, did you see Forrest Gump last week?
What, Dennis?
Did you see Forrest Gump in Savannah?
I did.
Everybody have a good evening. To stay safe, everybody.
And I'll stick around a couple minutes if you want to talk. So, but that's the end of this week's Tribe Talk. Thank you.